This is the second video of the JRPG Iceberg. Make sure you watch part 1. Or don't. I don't care. You can enjoy this video on its own. It's up to you. So let's get started. Starting off Tier 3, we have Dark Cloud. Originally intended as a launch title for the PS2 in March of 2000, the game wasn't released until December 2000 in Japan and May 2001 in North America, and in September for Europe. Thank God we have simultaneous releases now. Dark Cloud combines the mechanics of action RPGs with elements of city-building games to tell the story of a group of adventurers who fight against the Dark Genie who has destroyed many villages. Dark Cloud received mostly positive reviews from critics who praised its blend of gameplay types, but some criticized its combat as repetitive. The game was a commercial success. Even though it initially sold poorly in Japan, it went on to sell over 800,000 copies worldwide. Xenogears. Xenogears was released in 1998 for the PS1 by Square and was directed by Tetsuya Takahashi. It blends science fiction, religious symbolism, and psychology. The protagonist, Fei Fong Wong, is caught in a conflict between warring nations and discovering a mysterious giant robot called Gears. The plot goes into mysteries about ancient civilizations and human existence. It was praised for its intricate plot, character development, and philosophical themes, but the game was criticized for some pacing issues and a rushed second disc. Despite the criticisms, Xenogears gained a cult following and is considered a JRPG classic, influencing later games developed by Takahashi like Xenos Saga and Xenoblade Chronicles. We talked about Xenoblade in the last video, but I think now is a good time to go into Xenos Saga. Xenos Saga was developed by Monolith Soft and released by Namco for the PS2. The games serve as a spiritual successor to Xenogears, with complex storytelling and philosophical themes. The plot is centered around a mysterious alien race called the Gnosis, the powerful Zohar artifact which is rumored to be capable of eradicating the Gnosis, and the conflicts between various factions vying for control. Throughout the series, characters explore themes of identity, consciousness, and the nature of existence while facing numerous challenges and uncovering the truth behind their world's history. The series was put on hiatus after the third game, with some themes carrying over to Monolith Soft's later works. Hyperdimension Neptunia. Hyperdimension Neptunia was first released in Japan on August 19, 2010 for the PS3. Developed by Idea Factory and published by Compile Heart in Japan, NIS in America, and Tecmo Koei in Europe. A parody of in-real-life console wars fought by gamers worldwide. The games take place in the world of game industry, which is divided into 4 regions that are each ruled by one CPU. Each region is completely different from the others, with each one representing a specific video game console. PlayStation represents PlayStation, Lowy represents the Wii, and Leanbox represents the Xbox. Plan Neptune represents the cancelled Sega Neptune. The 4 CPU goddesses... I'm sorry, it's really hard for me not to associate this franchise with Chris Chan.
Because that's what you deserve, you goddamn womanizing, raping, trolling, stupid, pickle-suited, nigger.
The 4 CPU goddesses are fighting each other for shares in a war known as the Console War. Shares are the manifestation of the belief citizens put into their goddess, and without shares, a goddess dies. Illusion of Gaia. Illusion of Gaia was published by Enix in 1993 in Japan and by Nintendo in 1994 and 1995 for North America and Europe. The game is set in a version of Earth that is partially historical but mostly fantasy-based. It contains many real-world sites such as Incan ruins, Nazca lines, the Great Wall of China, and the Egyptian pyramids. Each area holds a piece to the final puzzle unveiled in the Tower of Babel. Illusion of Gaia has a large cast of characters, but there are only 3 playable characters named Will, Frieden, and Shadow. Each one has unique abilities, and you need certain characters to gain access into certain areas. The characters all share the same HP and defense, but have different strength. This game has no experience points, no currency, and no equipment systems. Is this even a JRPG? How did it get on this list? Suikoden. The Suikoden series was written, produced, and overseen by Yoshitaka Murayama, who left Konami near the end of Suikoden 3's development. Noritada Matsukawa took over as senior director of Suikoden 3 following Murayama's departure. Suikoden 4 was directed by Matsukawa as well, but was produced by Junko Kawano, who was the chief designer in Suikoden 1. Suikoden 5 was directed by Takahiro Sakayama, a relative newcomer to RPGs. I hope you guys remember to write all that down because it will be on the test. The events of the Suikoden games are not chronological, but they all take place in the same world. In some cases, several characters appear in multiple installments. In the Suikoden series, the player takes control of a battle party having a maximum of 6 people, consisting of the protagonist and 5 other characters. Suikoden 4, however, reduces the party to 4 fighters and 1 support. The main objective of the game is for the protagonist to defeat the opponents who are trying to oppose their team. This becomes possible as every game in the series revolves around the recruitment of the 108 Stars of Destiny, wherein the fighter characters recruited from the bunch can be used as members for the battle party. Every game in the series has their respective Stars of Destiny. The series makes use of running around towns on different islands and into dungeons filled with monsters or enemies. A base or headquarters will also be obtained by the player, which are usually abandoned monster-infested castles that turn into bustling communities when captured. Parasite Eve. Parasite Eve was developed and published by Square and released in 1998 for the PS1. It was actually a sequel to the novel of the same name that was written by Hideaki Sena in 1995. Parasite Eve was Square's first M-rated game, and the first major American and Japanese game development collaboration for the company. The game mixes RPG and horror elements, making itself one of the most unique settings for a JRPG in my opinion. The protagonist Aya Brea is attending an opera at Carnegie Hall in New York City with a blind date. During the opera, everyone in the building spontaneously combusts except for Aya, her date, and an actress on stage named Melissa Pierce. Melissa runs backstage with Aya chasing after her. Backstage, Melissa mutates into a beast and flees into the sewers, declaring that her name is now Eve. Wild Arms. Wild Arms was published by Sony and first released in 1996 in Japan, 1997 in North America, and 1998 for Europe. Wild Arms takes place in the fantasy world of Phil Gaia and follows the adventures of a band of miscreants and adventurers called Dream Chasers. The Dream Chasers scour the world in search of excitement and fortitude. The player controls a young boy named Rudy, who has the ability to operate powerful weapons called Ancient Relic Machines, or ARMS. ARMS are forbidden remnants of a lost age that resemble firearms. Rudy, along with his companions Jack and Cecilia, must use their respective skills to navigate through the wastelands and dungeons of Filgaia and prevent an otherworldly threat from reviving their lost leader and destroying the world. Wild Arms' release was a bit overshadowed by the upcoming Final Fantasy VII, but it was still a critical and commercial success. In November 2003, an enhanced remake titled Wild Arms Alter Code F was released for PS2 in Japan, with the North American version produced in 2005. The Wild Arms franchise went on to have 6 sequels, with the most recent being Wild Arms XF for the PSP in 2007. Phantasy Star. Phantasy Star was developed by Sega for the Master System in 1987. It was one of the earliest JRPGs for consoles. Sega began development on Phantasy Star so their Master System could compete with the popularity of console RPGs, particularly Dragon Quest, released in the year prior. Kotaro Hayashida and Yuji Naka formed a team staffed by a large number of women at the time, including graphic designer Rieko Kodama, whose earlier works included character design for Champion Boxing and work on other arcade games like Sega Ninja. The team wanted Phantasy Star to be a unique experience, so they added elements like 3D dungeon crawling, a female protagonist, and ample animation. Phantasy Star's setting was a blend of science fiction and medieval fantasy inspired by Star Wars. Phantasy Star has several sequels, including one of the most popular MMORPGs of all time, Phantasy Star Online. PSO was developed by Sonic Team and released for the Dreamcast in 2000. It was the very first online RPG for game consoles. In PSO, players adventure with up to 3 others over the internet to complete quests, collect items, and fight enemies in real-time action RPG combat. The story is unrelated to previous games in the series, so there's no need to play any prior entries. Radata Stories. Radata Stories is an action RPG developed by Tri-Ace and published by Square Enix in 2005 for the PS2. The game received mixed reception in both North America and Japan when it was released, but over time the game has developed a loyal fan base. It sold over 413,000 copies worldwide. Radata Stories places great emphasis on its persistent world and NPCs, each with their own lives, jobs, personalities, homes, dialogues, and schedules, which are controlled by the day-night system. This game lets you kick anything. Kicking furniture and inanimate objects will occasionally turn up items or currency, and kicking NPCs several times will cause them to fight or summon guards to fight for them. Breath of Fire. Breath of Fire is a series developed by Capcom and first released on the Super Nintendo in 1993. The series has recurring characters and ambiguous continuity, but each game is its own self-contained story. The story usually follows an adventurer named Ryu who can shapeshift into dragons. During his journey, he befriends a girl with wings named Nina. Following the mainstream success of JRPGs in the 90s, the series began using the original anime-style artwork for later Western releases of the game. The most recent release in the series was Breath of Fire 6, which was a web-based multiplayer RPG with microtransactions. I guess we know what killed the Breath of Fire series. Star Ocean. Star Ocean was developed by Tri-Ace and first published by Square Enix in 1996. The original Star Ocean introduced a private action social system where the protagonist's relationship points with other characters are affected by the player's choices, which in turn affects the storyline and leads to branching paths and multiple endings. Star Ocean is known as one of the earliest real-time action RPGs to implement one of these systems. The developers at Tri-Ace, being fans of science fiction and space travel, created the Star Ocean series with a sci-fi setting in mind. They've cited Star Trek as one of their main influences for the game's visuals. While the first game included more fantasy elements to appeal to a broad audience, subsequent installments moved toward a sci-fi oriented feel. Yoshinori Yamagishi cites Star Ocean Till the End of Time as Tri-Ace's ultimate vision of the whole Star Ocean world. Yokai Watch. Yokai Watch is an RPG developed and published by Level 5 for the 3DS. It was released in 2013 in Japan, 2015 in America, and 2016 for Europe. The game is based on yokai, or strange apparitions of Japanese folklore. The main character Nate, or Katie, is given the Yokai Watch, which gives them the ability to see yokai after befriending the butler Yokai Whisper. The player travels around town searching for and befriending peaceful yokai, battling hostile yokai, and solving problems caused by mischievous yokai. Yokai Watch sold over 53,000 copies in its first week, becoming the best-selling handheld game in Japan and the second best-selling game in Japan for that week, beaten only by Pikmin 3. And that's it for the third tier of the JRPG Iceberg from Reddit. Make sure you subscribe so you know when Tier 4 comes out on this channel. Thanks for watching to the end. See ya.
I'm so fresh, you can suck my nuts. I'm so fresh, you can suck my nuts. Swag. I'm so fresh, you can suck my nuts.